Okay, Alexander, let's do a follow-up to our live stream yesterday on Ghislaine Maxwell and what's going on there. As the Epstein story continues to unfold, we have a lot more news to get to. And this is coming courtesy of the Daily Telegraph, courtesy of the Daily Mail. Let me just read you what the Mail Online has as a headline. It says, Ghislaine Maxwell will be naming names. Jeffrey Epstein's arrested pimp is set to cooperate with the FBI in ominous news for Prince Andrew, and she could be held in prison where a pedophile killed himself. She was arrested at $1 million home in New Hampshire and subsequently appeared in court by video link, according to the Daily Mail. She bought the home for $1 million cash. Once again, according to the Daily Mail, between 2007 and 2011, Epstein transferred more than $20 million into Maxwell's bank accounts. And there's a lot of stuff that you'll get to about Andrew as well. The Daily Mail outlines a lot of it, and the Daily Telegraph outlines a lot of it being papers located in the UK. But here's something from The Sun as well, which is another paper in the UK, Murdoch owned, correct? Murdoch has
Correct, absolutely, right? Absolutely, yes.
So speaking to The Sun, Epstein's former employer, Stephen Hoffenberg, said the pedophile's ex-girlfriend, Maxwell, knows everything, it's a quote, and will totally cooperate after her arrest. Hoffenberg, a convicted fraudster who employed Epstein at Towers Financial in the 1980s, said, quote, there's a lot of people very worried about what Maxwell could reveal. She's going to cooperate and be very important. Andrew is definitely concerned, Hoffenberg said. Let me just make a note once again, as The Sun also says, Hoffenberg is a convicted fraudster. He did serve prison time. He worked with Epstein. They were partners. So I just want to make that point. But that's what Hoffenberg says in The Sun's article. So Alexander, what's the latest out of Ghislaine Maxwell and this Epstein story, which is just massive?
Well, yes, indeed. It is huge news. Now, can I just talk about the Hoffenberg story? Because, yes, he is a convicted fraudster. He has served time. He's perhaps not the most reliable source. But as we discussed in our recent live, I think that it would make sense for Ghislaine Maxwell to take this course of cooperating fully with the authorities. And I will explain why. Briefly, I've read the indictment. We've seen what the witnesses say. It is extremely difficult for me to see what kind of defense she has that can really stick. She's apparently, as of this time, denying everything. But the very fact that she was hiding for so long in itself, I think, is suggestive that she had something to hide. Innocent people tend to come forward to protest their innocence. The fact that she wasn't doing so and that she wasn't cooperating with the US authorities from the beginning, I'm afraid will count against her. So, given that it is difficult to see what sort of defense she has, from a legal point of view, it is very much in her interests now to cooperate fully with the authorities by giving them all the information that she has, because that will result in a more lenient sentence. I mean, it could result in a plea deal. So I think that I am inclined to take this seriously. And I'm going to say something else. I wonder whether Hoffenberg, given that he seems to be speaking with knowledge, and Maxwell haven't been in contact in some way, but that's just a guess. So I think that she will be cooperating. I think she will provide all this information. I'm afraid people like Prince Andrew are absolutely in the frame. And the word out here in England is that the Queen is extremely worried about this and very concerned that what's going to come out is going to very seriously damage the monarchy. There is something else, and I find this actually quite extraordinary. And we were talking about this just before the program. We did this program, and it's only been slipped out. I saw it in only one place in the Daily Telegraph, but it seems it is true. And that is that, contrary to what we were saying in our recent live, it seems that Maxwell has been in the United States all along. She was not in France, she was not in Brazil, she was not in Britain, she was not in Israel, she was not in all of the places that she has been reported to be. And I'll just read this one, I think, absolutely telling sentence in the Daily Telegraph. It said, in court filings, prosecutors said Maxwell had been hiding out in locations, note plural, locations, in New England since Epstein's arrest in July 2019. In other words, she has been in the United States throughout that time. And moreover, we also have, and this comes from Bill Sweeney, the FBI's New York Assistant Director, in the press conference that he gave. He said, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire. We have been discreetly keeping tabs on Maxwell's whereabouts as we work this investigation. So, in other words, the US authorities have known all along where Maxwell was, and she was all along in the United States. She has been in multiple locations, presumably since around December, or at least this year. She has been in this large mansion in New Hampshire, which she bought through a limited liability company in a cash purchase in December of last year. But she has been in various locations, which suggests strongly that she has been protected or at least housed by people. Now, that begs lots of questions. It begs questions about who was giving her refuge so that she was able to move around New England in various locations. And it also begs the question of why, if the US authorities all along knew of her whereabouts, which is what we are being told was the case, why she wasn't arrested before. Now, I have to say, if you believe that she was being protected by someone, that information might reinforce that belief. And if you also believe, as I do, that the reason why Jeff Berman, the US attorney for the Southern District of New York, was sacked in this extraordinarily complicated way a few weeks ago, a short time ago, was because of connected in some way with the Epstein-Maxwell investigation. That also tends to reinforce this view. It could be, I am speculating, but I'm joining the dots, but I think this is informed speculation. I'm joining the dots that Berman was delaying issuing an arrest warrant for Maxwell. Now, if that is true, that begs even more questions, and it makes us wonder very much about the direction this investigation was taking.
Yeah, we're the only ones, from what I've seen at the moment, we're the only ones that have made that connection between Berman and Epstein. So I want to make a note of that. It looks like Berman was the roadblock to getting Maxwell. Well, that's what all the signs are pointing to.
That's how it looks to me.
That's how it looks. I'm not saying
we have proof. We don't have proof, but just consider the timings of all of this. We had an investigation that seemed to be going nowhere. We had Ghislaine Maxwell moving around New England, going from one location to another until she ended up in this place in New Hampshire, which she bought in this strange way, in this hole in the corner way. Berman, who is supposed to be in charge of the investigation, doesn't seem to be doing very much. He is then dismissed in very acrimonious circumstances, and suddenly we have a flood of news about the Epstein-Maxwell investigation, and Maxwell is herself arrested. Now, the timing in itself, I think, is suggestive, and it does suggest, at least to me, that Berman was an obstacle in the investigation, and that is important, and that is something we need to keep a sight of.
Yeah, and we have a lot of misdirection with her whereabouts, Brazil, France, the story that came out a couple weeks ago that she was in France. So, that's from what we understand, going by the Telegraph's reporting, if it is true, then she was not in France.
I don't have any doubt about
that.
Right.
Well,
I mean, this is one
most likely it's true, but that would mean there was no issues of extradition or anything like that, and there's no issues as to what we speculated during our live stream. Why did she leave France to come back to the U.S.? She was in the U.S. the whole time. That's the way it's looking right now.
Yes.
And we're pretty confident to say that probably is the case.
Yes.
So we know that they had their eye on her.
Yes.
We know that they wanted to get her.
Yes.
And we can speculate that Berman was the roadblock towards getting her. Now, Berman is an Obama appointee, a Democrat, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. So Barr and his team, Barr, Trump, White House, they get rid of Berman. It opens up the way to get to Maxwell. Now, why is she in New England? New England also encompasses, Alexander, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So it encompasses a lot of territory. What's in Massachusetts? Harvard, MIT, Larry Sumner, who has very close connections, from what we understand, with Epstein. Reid Hoffman, who organized a fundraising for MIT with Epstein and helped rehabilitate Epstein in 2015. Massachusetts area as well. A lot of money, a lot of institutions, higher education institutions, a lot of powerful people associated with those institutions who are also part of the Democrat establishment, more specifically part of the Hillary Clinton machine. Reid Hoffman is part of that Hillary Clinton machine in Silicon Valley. Larry Sumner, of course, is part of the Hillary Clinton machine in the Obama machine. He was also, I think he was the president of Harvard during the time when Mark Zuckerberg was actually attending Harvard. There's another name, a very powerful person who also had contact with Epstein. He claims it was brief contact, as did Elon Musk, who also had contact with Epstein, though he claims it was a brief contact with Epstein as well. And of course, part of that entire Democrat machine are the two, I think, biggest fish in this game, which is Bill Clinton and Bill Gates.
Yes.
So for me, Maxwell being in New England is not a surprise. I think there's a lot of connections that she has in New England and a lot of very, very powerful people in and around that area. That's just, once again, I'm just connecting some dots that I see in front of me.
Well, can I just strengthen those dots a little? You talked about New England. In fact, this mansion, and again, I'm reading this from the Daily Telegraph, which, can I stress again, is about as mainstream as it gets. This mansion is 90 minutes from Boston by car. 90 minutes from Boston. Boston is, of course, the capital of so much of the things that you said. It's in Massachusetts. It's where all the big colleges, educational institutions, it's where places like Harvard, MIT, they're all in that part of the world. So we're talking about, absolutely, she was located right at the center of this world, and was moving from location to location around it. So that is extraordinarily interesting in itself. And yes, it's very interesting that of all the places in the United States where she apparently went to hide, and again, the Daily Telegraph is a very reliable newspaper, and it claims that it's obtained this information from prosecutors' filings about her being in New England. Of all the parts of the United States, well, she didn't go to, to one of those all desert places. She didn't go to, New Mexico or Arizona. She wasn't hiding on a ranch somewhere or anything of that kind. She was in a part of the United States, a very well-established part of the United States, but, as you rightly say, very close to a center of power, which is, let's be straightforward about this, a center of power very much of the democratic, liberal, political establishment,
going back decades,
and financial establishment. Exactly.
Going back decades. That's Massachusetts, that's New England. Yeah.
Going back decades, as I said, within 90 minutes from Boston. I mean, who was visiting her there? Apparently, I mean, if she was she getting visitors or what? Good question. And this is the other extraordinary thing, and I come back to this. This is what the U.S. authorities had themselves said. They knew she was there, and they didn't arrest her or call her in. So how was all this happening? Questions, lots of questions. We can guess at some of the answers. We mustn't take our guesses too far, but already the questions themselves lead to some possible answers, which are extremely interesting, and if I can say it frankly, ominous also.
Okay, very quickly before we end this video, this update on what's going on in the Epstein story. Prince Andrew, your thoughts?
Well, I think he's in very, very serious trouble, because the way in which the US authorities are now talking about him, it's quite clear that they consider that he has very, very serious questions to answer. In fact, I mean, they clearly don't accept his denials. Let me put it no more strongly than that. They don't accept these denials. They clearly believe the witnesses, including the Virginia Giuffre, who they clearly give credence to. And by the way, there was a very interesting decision in the Dershowitz case, which we were talking about the other day, in which Giuffre's lawyers were ordered to destroy all the depositions that she's apparently got. Now, that is a very interesting decision, and that's all I completely understand, by the way. But that suggests, because the judge said that they obtained this evidence illegally, unlawfully, but it doesn't say that evidence is untrue. And Dershowitz, who is saying it's untrue and is saying that Giuffre's account is unreliable, is actually complaining about the destruction of this evidence. So go back to that, that previous program that we did. It is very suggestive. It suggests, again, to me, I may be misreading this because I don't fully understand this, but it certainly doesn't suggest to me that the judge disbelieves what Giuffre is, necessarily disbelieves what Giuffre is saying. He's saying she's done wrong because she's got her hands on evidence that she should not have in her possession, but he doesn't say that she's lying.
Dershowitz is professor emeritus at Harvard. Is that correct?
Absolutely right. He's also
where's Harvard located?
90 minutes away from where Ghislaine Maxwell was.
It's not surprising she was in the New England area. I think.
No, it doesn't.
I think she has a pretty deep network there.
It's not surprising at all. And in fact, by the way, there's yet another article in the Daily Telegraph which talks about how she was moving money around from account to account all the time that she was in the United States, using various aliases to basically try to conceal her movements. But in fact, as I said, we're told that the US authorities, the FBI and the DOJ, and one must assume the prosecuting authorities in the Southern District of New York, all the time actually knew where she was. So Jeff Berman knew where she was, but he didn't order her arrest. Why didn't he order her arrest? I think he should be asked that question, and I think we should be told whether or not it was his dismissal which actually has led to her arrest, because the timing certainly makes it seem so.
Yeah, I mean, we can assume why, and I'm sure it was all about protecting the people on that list and protecting people for what she knows, as Hoffenberg said.
Exactly. She
knows everything.
Well, this is the point. I mean, you want to keep somebody who knows everything. You don't want them talking to the authorities. So what do? You hide her. Difficult to get her out of the country because, of course, there's always a risk if she tries to leave by a flight that she'll be recognized. I mean, her picture is all over the place. So dangers with that. Dangers also using false ID and cards and passports and things of that kind. So you keep her hidden away. You don't, and at the same time, you don't arrest her.
And I think it also confirms the fact that we were saying in our live stream yesterday that she probably has a lot of material evidence, a lot of videotapes, and God knows what other kind of documentation that she may have or know the whereabouts of. Because if she didn't have this stuff stashed away somewhere or know where this stuff is, then she would have been taken care of, so to speak. I think that's my opinion. I mean, I think she knows a lot. I think she knows where certain things are hidden. And I think she wasn't talking and they were hiding her. Otherwise, they would have... what's the phrase? Arkansas.
Anyway, the important point is this, and I come back to what I said. From a legal perspective, it is overwhelmingly in her interests to cooperate with the authorities and to tell them everything she knows. I am sure she will. Yeah. So all those people who are now in a difficult situation, their situation has just become more difficult. I'm not saying they can't find ways out. The United States has the most sophisticated and complicated legal system in the world. They can throw lawyers at it. There's vast amounts of money. They will deny every allegation, no doubt about it. But that process today looks more difficult than it did a week ago.
And the question becomes if they can protect her.
And quite, yes. Yes. Well, she's an absolutely key witness now.
That's what we said about Epstein.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you know, he's not in the land of the living anymore. So they'll be presumably very careful to make sure that she remains in the land.
He disappeared one way or another.
He disappeared one way.
No, but I mean, exactly. That's the $1 million question. Can they protect her?
Well, indeed. No. Absolutely. But can I just say something? I mean, you know, the US authorities, in theory, have huge experience of protecting important witnesses. So, you know, it shouldn't be beyond the realm of the possible to do that.
Yeah, but once again, look at what happened with Epstein and where, and look at where it happened.
Where it happened, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're just at the beginning of this.
This is a very, very interesting story, a very interesting, very developing story, and we certainly need to keep an eye on it and see what happens. I expect, by the way, that events are going to continue to accelerate over the next few weeks. Right. Look forward to more arrests.
Mm-hmm. Such as?
Well, I mean, if
do you have any names that come up to?
No, I'm not going to name any names.
Okay.
I think that would be most inappropriate to do.
Are you thinking of people associated with Epstein, or are you thinking arrests as in elite globalist types?
I'm thinking of both, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking absolutely of both. She starts naming people, and this begins to tally with information that's obtained from other sources. We will probably start to see more arrests happening. Both of people who worked for Epstein and Maxwell, and of people who might be implicated.